Hey there, and a huge welcome. Today we're going to talk about how you can increase your BEN 4, 5s and 6s in community and family studies. So for those of you who don't know my background, I've taught CAFS for 16 years in the classroom and then 18 years altogether inside what I do now inside the Learning Network. So I taught in the classroom, and back in July 2020, I decided to leave the classroom and pursue a bit of a lifelong career goal in actually having my own professional learning organisation. So CAFS has been part of my orbit for 18 years and I absolutely love it. And I know that as a CAFS teacher, you do too, because it's very different to any other course out there. It's very unique in the way that it gets the kids connected right into the course, but also to the actual, the content itself really lends itself to having lots of great opportunities for discussion, exposure to real life situations. I think that probably is what makes CAFS so unique, ahead of the rest. So today we're going to chat about what you can really do in the classroom on the ground to improve your students' results. Because, look, I get it. I've been there and done that. When I first started teaching CAFS back in 2004, I had no idea what I was doing. Literally, I had the textbook, I had the syllabus. It was the purple textbook back then. And I had no idea. I was in my own little land, on my own little island, trying to figure out what I could do to really help my kids improve. And I had a really good class when I first started. They were very similar to my brother's age. He's 4 years younger than me. So when I first kind of went into the classroom, I was fresh-faced, 21 or 22-year-old, and I had no real roadmap in terms of what success would look like for my kids. Fast track to now, I have that roadmap because I've been part of so many different experiences in community and family studies to help me get there. And I know what success looks like. I know what it takes to help our kids go from having no idea to really flourishing and thriving in our course. So strap in today. I want you to take some notes around what you can do literally tomorrow to help your kids. And it's not just your Year 12 kids. It's starting from Year 11 on lots of these things. I'm going to take you through 5 main areas that are going to help you improve those BEN 4, 5s and 6s. Of course, any of these can be applied to your Year 11 cohort as well, not just improving your HSC results, but improving your Year 11 results. And at the moment, we have our common grade scale, our ROSA in Year 11. So it's that scale that helps us work out what our kids are going to be doing to achieve those results that we and they want. So when you have a look at the common grade scale on the NESA website, you'll see that the common grade scale is applicable to all of our Year 11 courses. It's the same common grade scale. It's the same type of skills, same type of understanding of the syllabus that they need to do to show those levels. And it's often having an extensive knowledge and understanding of the syllabus and application of the course. Then we have our thorough knowledge, understanding and skills. We then have our sound, which is kind of like a C kind of level. Our sound, knowledge, understanding and skills. We then have our basic understanding, and then it's fairly limited, which is like at the kind of like the lowest level, like an E that they might need support in. So that can also be kind of similar to what happens in our performance band descriptors. Our performance band descriptors are unique for each of our HSC courses, and they were developed way back when our course actually started. So if you're new to seniors, you have to go there. You have to look at both the performance band descriptors and the common grade scale to work out what types of things that the kids should be doing to help them achieve good results in our course. Now, if you haven't been part of any sort of marking experience, either with me as your CAFS coach and mentor, or in any of my courses, or when I used to do stuff for ACHPA, New South Wales, or you haven't actually done HSC marking, often you would kind of have no idea what success looks like. So I'm going to kind of give you an insight into that today, so you know what you can do to really help your kids thrive and flourish in your classroom. So the first one I'd love to unpack is actually teaching the skills to the kids. Now, these are things that aren't taught at university. Like, we're not taught how to help kids write a paragraph. We're not helped at university to really unpack the glossary of keywords. That's something that's not part of our practice. It's not part of our studies at university. I would love it to be. If you're a university lecturer or if you're a dean of a university, I'd love for you to start to embed that stuff into university practice, because Our kids need it. It's like their bread and butter. They can have all this content in the world, but if they can't apply their knowledge, understanding, and skills, they've got no hope. Like our performance band descriptors help us with that. So it really needs to shift towards that skills-based approach. So on the ground for CAFS, what that looks like is getting our content and then applying it in a number of different circumstances. So having those skills applicable throughout our course, and there are kind of, I suppose, soft skills or skills, content-based skills or course-based skills that are embedded in our course. In terms of other skills, what we're looking for here is skills on how to decode a question. I have an acronym to help you with that. Run FAR is the way our coach teaches inside my CAFS collective membership, but also in our coaching sessions with teachers. And in my E12 masterclass sessions, I show the kids what Run FAR looks like. And if you haven't heard the story about Run FAR, it really stemmed from my own students when I taught at Nagle College in Blacktown before I moved to the Central Coast. These two beautiful girls I had, Jess and Megan, just couldn't nail it. Like they were doing so well. They were in my my PE class, but they also did CAFS. And I just saw what they did. And they kind of had, Megan had this like little scratchy pencil and she would kind of annotate her response. I didn't know what it was back then. I was only fairly new to CAFS and fairly new to teaching seniors. And she would kind of write in and around her response, her question before she answered her response. So she would have a bit of a plan of attack first, and then she would kind of answer her question. And I started to watch these behaviours amongst these two girls in particular, because I know they were having success in other courses as well. And what they were doing really well was actually planning before they put pen to paper in their answer. So after a few things and a few kind of tweaking, I came up with the acronym Run FAR. And basically what it looks like is decoding your question before you put pen to paper in the lines. So getting the kids to read it, to underline the question, look at the definitions of things by naming them, then really kind of formulating a plan of attack before they put pen to paper, answering it, of course, once they've done all those steps, and then rereading their answer. If you'd love to hear more about that, I have some resources for you. Please send me a message. But if you would love to join us in the CAFS Collective membership, doors open for the mid-year intake very, very soon. And it's like our bread and butter. It is literally part of one of the things that we do consistently within the membership to show you guys what it looks like, but really helping the kids decode their question first before they actually put pen to paper. I was presenting at a professional learning staff development day on Monday, and one of the things that came up was getting the kids' ideas from their head to the paper is often really hard. So I mentioned that to them and said, look, it's all well and good to have these ideas and to kind of start writing and to go through the paper as quick as you can. But to get your ideas from your head first to the paper needs some planning. Like when we do work for ourselves or any planning, or the kids do an assessment task, they're going to plan first. So that 30 seconds to a minute of planning, of decoding, using Run FAR, my acronym to help the kids, is going to help you. The next thing that I always talk about is the glossary of keywords. They're a complete game changer for your kids. If you're not focusing on the glossary of keywords, you're leaving a lot of marks on the table, and I reckon half marks. So if it's an 8 marker, if the kids don't address the glossary of keyword, they're not going to actually be able to achieve those marks. So once I finally realized that the glossary of keywords was really important, I remember in, I think 2008, it might have been, even earlier, maybe 2005, I had this beautiful CAFS class. It's about 16 girls because I taught an all-girls school. And we had this little dog box. We're literally in this, I think an ex-English storeroom. It had that crumbly ceiling, like the white ceiling kind of thing that would often then fall on the carpet. The carpet was pretty rank. I remember being at the top of this big building that we had at school, and our GA, so our general assistant or groundskeeper, would often mow the lawns every time we'd had CAFS that lesson. Like every time, I swear, I would go to say something, and then there'd be this big noise coming from the lawnmower, from Norm actually doing the lawns. And we would have a laugh about it in class. And look, we had a really good kind of rapport with it. I had a really good rapport with the kids. Great class, was able to build that community. Anyway, we had this big fluoro CAFS written on the back of our wall with all the glossary of keywords. But I often would talk to the glossary. I would often get the kids to recall the glossary. What I really wasn't doing was getting the kids to actually have a really good understanding and knowing the difference between each of those glossary of keywords. So my kids could recall what the word explain was, or they could recall what evaluate or analyze was, but they weren't actually able to show me what that looks like. And you know why? Very basic, because I didn't know. I didn't know what those glossary of keywords actually meant. I wasn't taught that at school. I wasn't taught that at university, and I wasn't teaching it to my kids. So I don't know how Steph that year got a band 6, and that was my third band 6. I got 2 band 6s in my first year of teaching CAFS, or first cohort through. So that would have been 2005. So this would have been 2006. So these girls in this dog box of a classroom, they had all the words. They had the words there, but I wasn't actually modelling it for them. I wasn't teaching it. I wasn't breaking each of those questions down, each of those words down, and I wasn't really showing the kids what each of those meant. So I really believe teaching the skills, the glossary, the soft skills within our CAFS course, things like showing the relationship between something, or showing the impact, or having a look at a question and being able to pull apart maybe some scenarios or situations that you're going to talk about in your answer, and then actually like structuring your response or annotating it is really part of the skill to get a band 4, 5, or 6. If you do all of that well, of course you're in that top band 5s and 6s, but the kids need to do that consistently. And as teachers, we need to take on that ownership of actually teaching the skills. Okay, the next one is a focus on application of content. Notice how I said application of content and not a focus on content. I still honestly believe there's about 1,200 CAFS teachers in New South Wales. Majority of them are still them, I didn't say them, I mean like us as teachers, are still teaching the content, and there's not enough focus on the application of the content. Many CAFS teachers are so focused on the learn about, learn to, and then maybe like a bit of a revision question later on, but we're not actually helping the kids understand that content in that application. And we see that through how the kids actually go in the HSC. So if you haven't heard my story before, I obviously taught CAFS for 16 years. And in those 14 years I was in the classroom in Sydney. 2 years after that, I was on the Central Coast teaching. So I taught CAFS for 16 years. And literally for those 16 years, I was a HSC marker because that was part of what I did. I absolutely loved it. I lived and breathed HSC marking. So I saw it right from the beginning when I first started in 2007 that the kids really struggled with that application of content. So what I'd learned from HSC marking, I was then able to replicate into my classroom and make my kids really apply their knowledge, understanding, and skills of the content through application-based learning. So that's bringing the classroom to life, bringing it to life with different things that are going to help them understand what it takes for success. So in 5 of my years of a HSC marker, I was like the head of HSC marking. It's called the supervisor of marking for community and family studies. So that was my job for 5 years, to make sure the whole process was reliable and accurate, and we had a statewide standard set that our markers were marking to, like for the HSC. So, of course, in that role, I even had a more intimate insight into what success looked like. I knew what a band 4 looked like and what I could do to help my kids get beyond a band 4 into a band 5. I knew what a band 5 looked like because I could see those characteristics in our kids across the state time and time again. And then I could see those kids in my classroom. And then, those band 6s, they're elusive, but you kind of know. You do know after having such experience of what success looks like in the class. And obviously, I'm using these 5 areas to show you that this is what success looks like. So that focus on the application of content really needs to be highlighted in your class. And that can kind of then be brought through. Our point number 3 about improving results is really engaging teaching and learning activities. So when I first started teaching CAFS, I would literally walk up to the classroom. I might have some notes on the board, or I might have the textbook set out amongst my class and say, okay, today we're turning to page 25, whatever it might be, and we're going to copy the notes into your book. would have a bit of a discussion. You might do the questions in the textbook. There was no variety there for me. So I don't know how my kids even got those band 6s in the first couple of years. And look, we did get a high number of band 5s as well, and some band 4s in there. But the kids, like, I didn't know what success looked like. I thought success was making sure I nailed the content. But I soon realized that I needed to get the kids to have some engagement in some really practical teaching and learning activities. So that was my mission, literally, to then go, okay, well, if I know what success looks like, I need to work on the skills, I need to work on application of content, but I need to do that through engaging teaching and learning activities. So I'm not going to share this today. I've shared this with my CAFS Collective members, so you can kind of get an insight as to what that looks like inside the membership. But my ideal lesson isn't just chalk and talk, or whiteboard and talk, or Google Slides and talk, or a PowerPoint and talk. I think there's still too much focus on that. And I see it in our community groups that people are looking for some slides or some PowerPoints to take the kids through the content. It's about bringing it to life, engaging your kids, having a hook, having like a bit of an entree into the start of the lesson to get the kids excited. And then obviously moving through my typical kind of CAFS lesson that I've shared with my CAFS Collective members. But it's not just doing the chalk and talk. Okay, which brings us to number 4, which is very different to all of these. So number 1, let's do a quick recap. Number 1 is teaching the skills, so the soft skills within the CAFS course, as well as peel, run, fire, our annotations of our response, our question, but also the glossary of keywords. Number 2 is focusing on application of content, that hands-on application. And number 3 was then doing that through engaging teaching and learning activities. Number 4 is going to shock you. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again to the cows come home. You can be the most amazing teacher in the world. You can get really good results, but if you can't teach and you can't connect with the kids, you have no hope. The kids won't work with you. You want to be able to build a really good rapport with your students. Otherwise, they're not going to come to the party. So I don't care like what it takes or how much kind of you invest in your teaching and learning activities or work on the skills. If you can't connect with the kids, they're not going to come to the party. They're not going to work with you. They're not going to help build that really good relationship amongst the class. But also, they're not going to feel comfortable coming to you if they've got a question, like a simple question. They're not going to come to you when it comes to assessment time and they're really struggling with an assessment task. Or when it comes exam time, like the crunch time, at the end of year 11 or possibly during trial time, they're not going to come to you for you to kind of work with them in a small group setting. So one of the things I think has been part of the secret to what I've done and how I consistently got a high number of band 4, 5s and 6s. Well, not me, my students got a consistent number of band 4, 5s and 6s across the 16 years of my classroom career was because of the rapport I was able to build with my kids. So even when I came from Sydney, I worked in the Catholic system in Sydney, in the Parramatta Diocese, came up to the Central Coast, a massive senior school, and I brought all of that knowledge and experience of obviously marking and teaching and learning in the classroom. I brought it to a new school and I got my kids to sit in cooperative learning groups. So my seniors hated it because everyone else wasn't doing the same thing. That my colleagues were doing the chalk and talk. They had the textbooks on the desk. So they came into my classroom. They couldn't choose where they sat. They didn't have much choice around that. I brought my classroom to life. I decorated my classroom so they felt comfortable and invited into my classroom. It was like walking into probably like my space now, like a really positive space, some aesthetics, some great colors, probably similar to what I've got now. I love rose gold if you haven't worked that out, but I had some rose gold kind of decorations. I had some really motivational quotes in the classroom. I had lots of tangible activities, my mini whiteboards, my stationery in the cupboards. I made it really inviting for the kids. And I was my authentic self. I was me. It wasn't that power struggle between my kids. I saw them for who they were. They were seniors, 16, 17, 18-year-olds who are there for a reason. They've chosen to stay on to school. They've chosen to be in a CAFS classroom. So building that rapport for me was, I think, part of how my kids consistently got above the state, got a high number of band 4, 5s and 6s. And when I first taught in that senior school, I think our kids, in my classroom, there might have been like 5 or 6 band 6s. I still had lots of, band 3s floating around. I kind of took the back end of year 12, so I had them in a job share position. I didn't have them all the time. I was being the relieving head teacher PE and Wellbeing. So I didn't really have the kids much. So those kids didn't know me from the beginning, from year 11. So I think there was still a bit of a sprinkle of band 3s and 2s in there. But those results had improved. As soon as I had my own class from year 11, completely changed the way the kids approached their senior studies. They loved the class. I was myself. We had a good classroom environment. I connected with them, their life, what was happening for them. I brought in their experiences into the classroom. Our classroom was a really safe space. They could ask me anything about our course, but also, if they were struggling, they can come to me. I don't know. And it wasn't like, it's not just a magic wand that you wave and then something automatically happens. It's those little conversations that you have with the kids in the playground, getting to know them outside of the classroom, working out what they like to do. I soon worked out that a lot of my kids love sport like me, which is good to kind of connect with them that way. So we had, who was in that cohort? Just trying to think back. So we had kids who were into water polo, kids who were into ice skating, kids who, lived in the local community. And, you kind of get to know them and their family. And you bring those situations into your classroom without kind of saying, oh yeah, George's family, this, and this. You start to talk kind of like in third person, but dig down, that person can see their family or can see their community in your examples. So I think part of the recipe to success in CAFS is having a good rapport with your kids. Again, if you can't connect with them, they're not going to come to the party with you. They're not going to work hard. They're not going to do those revision sessions or those recess sessions. Every single Wednesday is what we did. We did a recess session every Wednesday at the senior school in Sydney. We had CAFS Club. We did it at lunchtime. I can't remember what day, but it was, consistently across the board. Having those little things to really help your kids feel seen and heard is definitely part of their success. So I don't know, just being yourself, being your authentic self, but also bringing your classroom to life, and how you make the classroom your own as well. Look, not all of us are in that position to make our classroom our own with like decorations and stationery and all those little bits. But if you can bring yourself into that at some point, it will help build all of that sort of stuff. Okay, the last one is creating a community within your classroom or even within your cohort. I know in Sydney, I think at one stage we built it. So from 1 CAFS class when I first started to 2 CAFS classes a couple of years later, to 3 CAFS classes, to 4 CAFS classes. We were teaching at an all-girls school, but creating that community amongst the CAFS crew, I call them. So your CAFS crew are your CAFS students and CAFS teachers, but really building and bridging that gap with your kids. Now, I know that not all schools have that connection, but you just need to break down those barriers. If you don't get along with a colleague, or if your colleague is not sharing resources, or if you're not on the same page, your kids will see it. They will see and they'll find out. They'll kind of see that disconnection. You want to be able to build and create a really good CAFS community at your school. You want CAFS to be the best subject that's offered across all senior subjects. And I think that's why our CAFS results, not just in Sydney, but on the Central Coast, were like amongst the top 3 results of the school, like the best results in the school. A high number of band 4, 5s and 6s. And those 6s were probably like in that top 2 or 3 consistently year after year within their school itself. Our kids loved CAFS. And I think that's what really helped with the results, because they did love it. We did build that community. We did have those really good connections across the school and that cohort. So what can you do to actually build that community within your class? Is getting the kids to work together, having them in cooperative learning groups, breaking down those barriers with kids and making sure they interact with other people, having fun, having small, like little kind of incursions in class, or having guest speakers come in, doing like little charitable things. I remember in Sydney we did a big drive, so we collected some things for homeless people. So it's just some toiletries from hotels, and we got the school to kind of look in your home. Do you have any unused cosmetics, unused sanitary items, unused products, any toiletries? And we had a big drive. I think we ended up having 5 baskets across the school, and we then took those to McKillop Family Services, which is in Blacktown. So for such a small school, our kids were really generous and really donated a whole heap of things to charity. And then when I worked in the senior campus here on the Central Coast, we did the same sort of thing, but we made mini packs. One of our beautiful students, she did this outside of, her and her mum did this outside of school, which I think is just phenomenal. But we then kind of brought that to life in class. We made like little toiletry packs for homeless people in our local area. And then Tanisha dropped those off to Coast Shelter, which is our local homeless shelter here on the Central Coast. So just doing little things like that, having your recess or your lunch sessions. Bring food always brings your classroom to life and builds that community. When there's food, kids come. So if you're looking for a way to bring your kids into your class, having food, having a breakfast, having some healthy snacks happening, but really making the kids be seen and heard. In terms of creating that community within the class, getting the kids to be really vulnerable, share their stories, show their responses, have lots of group work activities, meaningful group work, get the kids to collaborate. I know back in 2017, I think it was, before I moved up here, my last cohort did very, very well. I think we had 5 girls or 6 girls from my class with a band 6. And I think the secret to that class was that they were so good at collaborating, and they had like shared Google Docs. So after every lesson, they then put their summary notes into the Google Doc. They really collaborated. And of course, like, I was intentional with what I did. I didn't get the kids to sit in their friendship groups. I split them up. I made, like, that was intentional. So let's quickly recap the 5 things that I would love for you to have an experiment with, have a go at doing in terms of building those band 4, 5s and 6s. And look, if you consistently get some really good band 4s and 5s, have a listen to today's podcast and have a think about what you can do even better with those kids. But the first one is around teaching the skills, being really explicit around that. Number 2 is focusing on application of content. Number 3 is engaging teaching and learning activities where it brings your classroom to life. The kids want to be there. Number 4 is around building rapport with your kids in your class. And then number 5 is really creating that CAFS community, both within your class as a community group, so everyone achieves really good results together, because essentially that's what happens. For our kids to get good results across CAFS, they have to be working together. If you're in silo and you have a couple of band 6s kind of traveling here, a couple of kids down at the bottom end, you need to bring them up as a cohort to get really good results. That's the only way that we get above the state average, is if our kids are working together and you're creating that sense of community with them, not just with your class, but if you have other CAFS classes and other CAFS teachers. So if you love today's chat around these 5 things, please let me know, and I'd love to be able to support you. Over the next few weeks, we're opening the doors again to the CAFS Collective, which is my CAFS membership, but we're also running 2 in-person events, and it's called HSC Success Sessions. So what that is going to look like is hearing from me as your CAFS coach and mentor, me sharing stories, me sharing strategic strategies that I've implemented in my classroom based on my expertise, based on my experience, having high number of band 4, 5s and 6s across 16 years, but also hearing from other successful CAFS teachers who've also had students achieve, in the top 10 of the state, high number of band 4, 5s and 6s, consistently across, over the last 10 or so years. So if you'd love to learn more about that, head over to thelearnit.com/events. and you'll see some details around the HSC success sessions, but they are in person, so a great way for us to connect in person. One is in Foster on the 12th of May, and the other one is in Western Sydney on the 19th of May. So again, if you have any questions, let me know. Thanks so much, guys. Have a great day.